All right, we have a new film series today that is essentially kind of ripping off AVGN, kind of ripping off the Nostalgia Critic. Haven't watched the latter, but doing a retrospective film series just looking at films from my past called Remember Wednesday. Wednesday. Credit my buddy Shane for that title. So today we are going to look at the film Clerks from 1994, directed by Kevin Smith. All right, so the year 1994 was a big year for film. You had the big three, Pulp Fiction, Shawshank Redemption, and Forrest Gump, that kind of dominated the film scene. And there's still a ton of great films. And you had this little indie film called Clerks, released by an independent filmmaker out in New Jersey who basically self-financed this film. He took out a bunch of credit cards and said, I'm going to make this film. And it basically is a reflection of his time working at the Quick Stop that you actually see in the film. That's the actual place that he worked. And the film goes over the day in the life of our main character, Dante. And he wasn't supposed to work that day. He got called into work. And he goes into work, and then you see the progression of the day. His buddy Randall, who works at RST Video right next door, him comes over and they get into a bunch of shenanigans, have a bunch of really interesting conversations, a lot of it inappropriate in front of customers. And you see the progression of Dante's love life play out throughout the story. So in 1994, I was a young kid, I think around 12-ish. I'm not going to do the math, around that time. And that was my favorite year of my life. Yes, I've had years where I've had kids and got married and all that, which those were great moments in my life, top 5, top 3 moments in my life. But just overall years of my life, 1994, I look back at, I love the media. I had, Weezer came out with their Blue album, had a bunch of great music. I had cable TV, watched Nickelodeon all the time and MTV, just had a great time. Just loved 1994. And this film really hit me huge when I eventually saw it, knowing that this came out in that year. That being said, I didn't necessarily see it in 94. To be honest, the first Kevin Smith movie that I saw was Mallrats, and we will get to that. I love that movie. But the second film I saw in Kevin Smith's catalog was Clerks. And that film was probably one of the most influential films for me to become a filmmaker. Just seeing what you could do. The big thing was I didn't really necessarily see films that were basically a day in the life type films. Usual films are kind of sweeping over many days, many weeks, even years on some occasions. But this was just one day. And I was amazed by, like, you can tell those stories in a feature length format. I know that's kind of dumb to say now, but back then I hadn't seen a lot of films that really did that. And that really kind of opened my eyes to, like, those types of stories. Like, stories seem achievable now, that like I could maybe come up with something. And as I grew up more as a older teenager, that really inspired me to really get into filmmaking. You can see some of the films on this channel. I have a lot of my old films that I produced. One of them is called Five. That's really kind of inspired by the narrative structure of Clerks and how that was put together. So there's even a segment that's black and white. So this particular film follows, again, Dante Hicks, and he is called into work, and he also has his girlfriend come in, and they have a very humorous conversation, and then she goes away, but then he discovers his ex-girlfriend is potentially getting married. And this sparks a series of events where he's actually trying to negotiate, trying to get back with his ex, but still not sure what to do about his current relationship. On top of his friend just wanting to screw around and basically not work and things like that. And that really spoke to me because when I was working at a movie theater growing up, I really reflected on the nature of that film. And that's kind of like how we were at work. We would talk about these random topics. and a lot of it inappropriate. And I could very much see how Kevin Smith took those types of conversations in that natural work environment and put it into a film. And having had a job then and experience kind of what I saw, what it took to make Clerks, I saw I can take these relatable situations that I've in my life and potentially make those into film and media. And I can't say how much that was a big relief for me to really have that realization that this is exactly what Kevin Smith did, and he was able to be successful with it. Granted, he had a lot more drive and motivation than I ever did. I wasn't about to potentially bankrupt myself to make a film, even though that's probably something that I would have loved to try. But I'm not as much of a risk taker as Kevin Smith was. In this film, also, you get the introduction of Jay and Silent Bob, who are very influential characters in media nowadays. They've showed up in a Scream film. They've had 3 of their own films based off of just them as characters. You see them pop up here and there throughout, MTV and pop culture and things like that. So I would say they have kind of crossed the barrier outside of the small niche of Kevin Smith fans to really kind of more in the lexicon of what you see in the media. So my first email address was Silent Bob. And a lot of people thought it was because of my dad, whose also name was Robert or Bob, and he was a quiet guy. So like, oh, you named this after your dad. And I'm like, okay, sure, why not? But it was actually after this particular movie and that particular character. So, all right. So I've rambled on a lot about this film. Again, this film is definitely in the top 10 favorite films for me of all time. It holds a very special place in my heart. And I would like to know, what do you think of this film? Have you seen the film? Are you a fan of Kevin Smith's work? Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of this particular film series. A lot of it is just basically going for me to kind of reflect upon how that film influenced my life and like I how it influenced me in who I've become today. That's really, I think, what I want this series to be. It's going to be less of specifically reviewing the film. I'll offer the synopsis like I have and things like that. Obviously, five out of 5 stars, for this particular one. I think as we get into other films that might not be absolute loves in my life, maybe I'll get into a little bit more review category and things like that. But I just want to opportunity to share films that I love in my life and give you an opportunity to maybe check it out. Maybe this is the first time you're hearing of this film. So really take the time. I suggest, checking it out. Yes, it is in black and white, so that might be a barrier for some people, but it's a very witty, very strong comedy, especially if you've worked a non-corporate job. You'll find a lot of things you can relate in this film. But all right, well, thank you again. And if I don't see you again, bye forever.